maybe we should first just start with Orphan Relief and Rescue. What is it? What is the work that you all do? And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so we founded Orphan Relief and Rescue 13 years ago. We started in Benin and Liberia, West Africa, where we have continued the work just because the work level is so great. And we intercept children from being sold to the border of Nigeria in Benin. And it's parents who can't feed all their children, pick a child to what they think is sell to work for their own keep. And then $100 a year is promised to them by the trafficker. So if they pick one child, it's in an area where there's 25 cents a day is the average wage for these families. So if they traffic even one child and get $100 a year, that's their annual wage. So we work in an area where 20% of all children were trafficked before we even got there. And we are curbing that trafficking numbers there. And then in Liberia, we work alongside the social welfare office. We helped put an accreditation committee together for there was a civil war there. And so after the Civil War ended in 2003, there was 10 orphanages before the Civil War, 145 came into existence after. So we helped them put an accreditation group together to just accredit or basically put closures into the orphanages. So there was a lot of corruption in the orphanages, lots of things that I don't have time to go into on this podcast, but we are continuing to do work there in Liberia as well. But the main anti-trafficking is in Benin, West Africa.
So just to summarize, you both rescue children from trafficking situations. You work on corruption within orphanages, and then you also run homes, or basically orphanages for kids so that they can grow up, stay in their country, grow up, and then the way you explained it to me was become contributing members of their own communities, and in hopes that they can help turn their communities around, essentially.
Yeah, so in Liberia, we don't run the orphanages. We work with trusted orphanage directors. In Benin, we do have an orphanage safe home of 61 kids, and then a girls safe home that's a separate home. So yes.
Okay. So let's talk first about COVID. What changed over the last couple of years, or didn't change with the COVID pandemic?
Yeah, so during the first, I'd say 6 to 8 months of COVID, all of our people went into lockdown. So we had to send our staff home, told them stay home, we'll pay you to stay home. The kids, we finally found out the kids on our feeding program weren't being fed at home. So we started up the feeding programs and started basically just doing emergency feeding programs through the first year of COVID, really. And then trafficking was not a huge issue because everybody was scared of getting COVID. I'd say after the first year, and financial hardships were really coming upon these families because they couldn't go to work, then they started to brave trafficking their children again. And this year we actually intercepted an extra 130 kids from being sold to the border of Nigeria. And it was kind of shocking that many kids. And there was also a drought that was a part of that, where a lot of families lost their farms. And so, yeah, it was an upswing in trafficking again. But we're just continuing to work with our staff who really work hard to make sure that these kids are protected and not sold.
Can you explain what some of the main reasons are that children end up trafficked, at least the ones that that you're rescuing, that you're working with?
Yeah, the kids that we work with, specifically their parents, are the ones trafficking them. And they are trafficking them because they can't feed all their kids. And they're picking one to send away, what they say, to work for their own keep, even though it is selling them into slavery. And the relatives, usually it's an uncle or an aunt that is in the trafficking world. Trafficking is just second nature to them in a lot of these villages. And they're just there to say, hey, we'll take your child to Nigeria, and, you'll get money every year from them if they work hard. And, just pick a child to take. And so they don't look at it as trafficking. We come in and we share the horrific things that happen to these kids when they are literally sold. And then we're also seeing the parents, if they have trafficked kids, we can, a lot of times, we put them on a microfinance program with the parents. So how we intercept a child is we'll find out from the social welfare office or from the chief of the village or a neighbor. They'll tell us, okay, this family is in hardship. Maybe a father died or a mother died, or they're just, their farm's not thriving. And so they'll come to us and literally say, we know, that this family is going to traffic their child tomorrow. So our staff, who is an anti-trafficking team, goes in, they intercept that child by just asking the parent, can we put your child into school on a feeding program and help you as the parent with a microloan so you can start a business and you don't have to, sell your kids. And they always say, well, yes, you've solved our problem, of course. And so we put them on the microfinance program. And then on that program is where we encourage them just the value of life, and, that if they know where their child is and can get them back, we'll put that child on our program and just teach them, not only about business, but about this God of love that loves them, hasn't destined them to be in poverty like they've been taught. I'd say 95% of the parents that we work with are deep entrenched into voodoo and witchcraft and sorcery. And so they really believe in the destiny of these gods, that if they are in poverty, it's the God's will, and that they don't have to do anything, or they no matter what they do, they're always going to be in poverty. So we come in with a shift of a thought process to say, the God of the universe who created you, that we strongly believe in, has not destined you to be in poverty, and help us help you get out of this situation of poverty. And we help them with their businesses, and their businesses begin to thrive, and lots of different worldview changes through them being able to help themselves and just getting out of that mindset of que sera, whatever will be, is kind of how they've basically been taught. So
how many of them would you say, or what is the percentage of those who, when you tell them some of the stories of what happens to the children when they're sold, how many of them, I guess, are remorseful that they made that decision, and wish that they hadn't, and are surprised by what you say?
yeah, so many children are being brought back from slavery and telling their stories. And so now a whole cultural shift of abuse is starting to shift. And these parents are starting to realize, oh my goodness, I heard, such and such, they just brought their daughter back and she was telling all these horrific stories. And my daughter is out there in Nigeria. I need to figure out how to get her back because she's probably being abused too. And so it's just been shocking to us. We have lost count, basically, of how many kids have been brought back from slavery. We're going to do, over the next year, we're going to do basically some statistics and finding the exact number. But it's huge how many parents are literally bringing their child back, and then we're helping them, put them on some sort of program, whether it's a trade school, apprenticeship type thing, or back into school if they've gone to school before.
If you wear glasses and you also want to support my work, I have a new sponsor that lets you do that. I actually wear their blue light glasses when I am editing my videos. So go get some blue light blocking glasses that work at betterspectacles.com/Allison. They do specialize, however, in progressive lenses and difficult prescriptions. And we can attest to this as a family because they have really helped my husband, who is a disabled veteran.
The reason why I have to wear glasses is because of some of the explosions that I've experienced. It causes my left eye to constantly do this. So when that happens, my right eye tries to syncopate, and it creates basically migraines that I can't do anything.
These progressives really help my husband with his eyesight and his migraines, and now you can get them too at betterspectacles.com/Allison. Again, betterspectacles.com/Allison. These are from the German engineered Rodenstock eyewear collection. It's a 144-year-old company. They also have opticians that will help you with your specific prescription. And right now they're offering an introductory 61% off their single vision or progressive glasses with Blue Block. Plus you get free handcrafted Rodenstock frames. So go visit the folks at betterspectacles.com/Allison. Again, that's Allison with 1L. See better what's going on around you and support my work while you're at it. Can you tell us some of the stories that I know you've seen a lot of pretty terrible things and heard a lot of terrible things, but some that have stuck with you that, like, maybe for the average person who doesn't do what you do, we would probably stay up at night thinking, you know, how is it possible that a human does this to a child?
Yeah. So one of our first little girls that was so shocking, it was a mother that brought back her child. The mother was on our microfinance program. The mother had trafficked 5 of her kids. One of the children was trafficked at the age of 6 years old. And from 6 to 8 years old, she was sold to a restaurant in Nigeria. And she was the first one to open up the restaurant at age 6, the last one to leave and do the last dishes, you know, to leave. And she said she was beat every day, you know, and of course we know they do that for submission purposes. The little girl didn't do anything wrong. And she was never fed enough. She said she was always hungry. So this mother was on our microfinance program, heard about all the abuse of what happens. And so she literally put pressure on, it was her brother that had trafficked her, put pressure on her brother to bring her back from this restaurant. And she came back to not know the language of her community anymore because she had been gone for 2 years and spoke a different language with where she was sold. And so the parents decided they were going to just resell her because, you know, if she couldn't go to school and couldn't help the family somehow, then they were just going to resell her. There was no maternal affection for this child. And so we intercepted her, put her in our safe home for girls. She's been with us for 8 years, and she is now 16 or 17 years old now. She's doing incredibly phenomenal, but she's had to walk through some huge forgiveness stuff with her parents because of what she went through, and she remembers it all. But she's one of the first ones that was like, oh my gosh, 6 years old. Like, I have grandkids that age, you know, and I couldn't even fathom what this little girl had gone through. And
You were kind of breaking up when you were talking about opening the restaurant and then closing it. And then you said she was beaten every day. Is that what you said?
Yes, she was beaten every day, and they do that for submission purposes. So any child that's taken into slavery, they will beat the child for no reason, just to bring fear into the child. And so the child's petrified if they do anything wrong, or, you know, it's just a control thing. So yeah, this little girl said she was beat every day. She never knew why. And it was just a horrific life for these 2 years that this little girl endured. But yeah.
Would you say that that story of physical abuse and just working really long hours is common in the situations that you're taking these kids out of?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say probably 99% of them are sold into slavery with that kind of abuse. It's beating them into submission. It's not giving them enough food. They're a piece of property to whoever purchases them. So if the person is selling in the market, you know, this little person is selling in the market with them, or they're using them to make money somehow. Yeah.
You were talking about the voodoo culture and just like the spiritual side of all of this. Let's switch to that for a second. When you're coming face to face with the people who are the adults, not necessarily the parents who don't know what they're doing, they think this is just like a job. Though I do wonder sometimes about somebody sending their 6-year-old off to just do a job like that. But I think you kind of explained that family may have not had the same kind of affection for their kid as other families. But let's talk about the people who do know, like they're highly aware that what they're doing as adults is funneling children into extreme abuse. How do you make sense of that? And could you talk a little bit about that too, from like your views on how religion and spirituality play into that?
Yeah. So in the voodoo witchcraft religion, there is no natural affection. So many of these parents have sacrificed, many of these mothers have sacrificed their first baby to instill a blessing on their other babies in this religious practice. So they have not attached themselves to that first child because they knew they were going to have to sacrifice that first child. And it literally robs the mother of the greatest gift that God, who created us, has instilled in mothers. And so what we have seen is the women who have had, what they felt like they had to sacrifice that first child, then they have no maternal affection for their following children. And they just have not attached themselves to these babies in their womb. And it's a very dark, witchcraft is very dark, and it robs the natural love that the God who created us has created in us to be. And so there's constant cursing happening. If they need something or want something, they go to the voodoo priest, and they pay something to the voodoo priest to put a curse or a hex or do a little poison potion or something, and they are making that come into existence for that person that they want to torment or get out of the picture so they can get the job that they want. It's a very dark practice that they are in.
And you have, fortunately, I guess, for if you want to have personal experience with it, or unfortunately, if you don't, you've yourself become a target of some of that. So I'm just curious, can you talk? And I mean, I'm not laughing because it's funny. It's just because it's crazy that you both go into work on this issue from like a very just corporal, not corporal, I guess corporeal would be the right word. Just, get the job done, get the kids out, get them fed, educated, help them heal, and be there for them, be it like the family unit that they may not have, and then help their parents. So it's all this like very, worldly stuff. But then there's this whole other side. I'm just curious if that was something you knew you were getting yourself into, where people were like, you know what, that Rebecca, I'm going to curse her. And then, what has your experience been like with that? And I know this may be a topic for some people that they're like, okay, Allison's definitely gone off the deep end, but I find this fascinating because it's just not something I run into on a regular basis.
Yeah, I never expected to be working in an area where I would be cursed regularly. And, I am a Christian, and I do believe I worship the most powerful God of the universe. And I'm thankful for that, the God who created me. But yeah, in this area, I have been cursed a couple different life-threatening times. One time I was going to an orphanage director who said that there was 16 kids missing. And so then I said, okay, well, let's do some investigation on how they became missing. And then he said, no, they actually died. And I said, 16 kids died this year. Like, why didn't I hear about it? And he says, oh, well, because I didn't want to worry you. Well, I knew he was lying. I knew he'd probably trafficked those kids. So I literally told him the next day I'm going to come with a shovel, and we're going to go to the burial site where you buried those kids. And I'm bringing the social welfare office with me. And he was pretty traumatized by that statement, because you don't dig up dead people ever in that country because of the superstition of the spirits that linger with those dead bodies. But I was calling his bluff, and I knew he hadn't truly buried them. So that night in my room, I literally had some sort of demonic thing in my room that was trying to take my breath. And I literally, every time I start to go to sleep, I feel this, I don't know, Harry Potter does a good illustration of these spirits that are like pulling your breath out and different things. And I was like, oh yeah, I've experienced that personally. But anyway, my breath was for the whole night from probably 11 to 5 a.m. I had some presence, dark presence in my room trying to take my breath. And I really felt like I was going to die that night. And if I did not have the God who created me in charge of my life, I really believed that I would die. And the next morning I went to the orphanage with the representative from the mayor's office, social welfare office, and this director became known real quick that he thought I would be dead that night. And so he was real shocked to see me and didn't know how I lived through that curse that he had placed on me. But yeah, so that was one time. And then another time a woman kissed me and ran away. And my staff quickly told me that, or soon told me, it was the day after, that I had gotten so sick with that. And they told me that that had been a curse. And so they came and prayed in my room and prayed over me. And within 2 hours, I was completely well. So yeah, just crazy, crazy stuff with this area where we work, definitely.
So going over to my locals community where people submit questions ahead of time. So if you're watching this somewhere else, go over to AllisonMorrow.locals.com and then you can ask Rebecca anything you want about all the crazy stuff she's seen. Bob Whittlefish says, has she run into any satanic Luciferian child abuse, e.g. pedophilia and harming children in part as ritual? And since that kind of has to do with some of the stuff we're talking about, just curious. And then there's a second follow-up question, but do you mind answering that first one?
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of that going on, actually. There's one young girl, she was 13. She was one of, I don't know, numerous wives. I think there was 13 wives, apparently, that this man had. And he was high up in the voodoo rituals. But he would do these voodoo ritual things, and it was all geared around, I don't know how I could say that. I'll say rape. You know, he raped her every night, but it was all centered around these voodoo, icky, yuck stuff. She ended up running away, running to us. We put her in our safe home for girls, and her story were pretty horrific. But he would keep these women. You know what he said, they were his wives, but there was no ceremony. It was just he would bring them in and use them as a sexual object. But yeah, he used that, and a lot of stories, you know, the different kids will tell us of the different things that they have been used for in these voodoo rituals, and it's very dark, very ugly, very hurtful, and yeah.
How do you talk to the kids about that?
Yeah, I mean, for them, when they're harmed and hurt, they just want to get out. Every single one of them, you know, they've been deep into witchcraft through their family line, and they always say that they're praying, and they don't know who they're praying to, but they're praying to be rescued. And every single one of them are praying to a higher power to be rescued out of those situations. And the cool thing is we get to be an answer to their prayer. And once we come in, you know, they come into our care, then we just share about this God of the universe, who has created us with love, has not destined us to be in these situations. And he just, wants a relationship with them. And we are seeing just, once they start grasping that they have value and worth that they've never been taught before, they're just, their whole countenance, their whole life changes, as well as they're protected. They can sleep, they can put their head down at night and sleep safely and well. And it's a beautiful thing, but it doesn't happen overnight that they're all of a sudden better. They definitely have a lot of fear that they have to walk through, and we just walk them through that they can call on the name of Jesus in the middle of the night if they need to, and you know, that's their protection. And it's just sweet, these little lives that have been so abused. And there's something that we don't understand in the spirit realm that goes on, but it's definitely a power tug of war that's happening in the heavenlies over these kids' lives.
As always, you can drink to free speech and support my channel by going to AllisonWinePromo.com. That's Allison with 1L winepromo.com. And check out my favorite wines. These are Malbecs from Argentina, and each one of them is very unique. One comes from a vineyard at almost 9,000 feet. So that's an extreme altitude Malbec, which gives it a very robust flavor. Another comes from the oldest vineyard in Argentina, and another uses natural fermentations. You get 50% off the wine itself and 50% off shipping, and you get to support my channel with a great glass of wine.